Okay, whenever you're ready, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm going to convene this meeting of the Madras Aquatic Center Recreation District Budget Committee on Thursday, May 8th, 2025 at 6:11 p.m. We are meeting today for our Budget Committee orientation working session. First up on our agenda is welcome and introductions.
And I believe everyone in the room knows each other. I believe our budget committee member, Alexa Gasner, on Zoom. Everybody knows Alexa. And then we've got a couple members of the public that are also listening in. Everyone's returning for the budget committee, so I think we're good to go unless anyone feels differently.
I would like to make one modification to the agenda. I would like to call for, after line item number 3, MacRD budget orientation, I'd like to open it up for public comment before we adjourn the meeting. I will ask, though, that it be public comment. If anybody would be interested in a Q&A session, we'd love to make ourselves available for that after we adjourn the meeting so we can send anybody who's unable to stay late home. Yeah.
And if you're on Zoom and you have questions, we can have a Zoom conversation as well after the meeting if you have questions.
Absolutely. Okay, so next up, we will dive into the MacRD budget orientation.
Well, good evening, Budget Committee members. Thank you for continuing to serve in this role. The goal tonight is to have a conversation about our current fiscal year budget. There are rules based on the Oregon revised statutes of what we can and can't talk about when we notice a work session of this group. So what we can't talk about are things associated with the proposed budgets for next year. So in your budget document that you have in front of you, or if you're on Zoom, it's available online on our website at www.macrecdistrict.com/governance. We're not going to talk about the proposed budgets for next year. We're only going to focus on this year for this work session based on what we are allowed to discuss. You're welcome to ask questions about our current organization, our operations, the vision, goals, and spending priorities of the board, any projections, and we're going to go over all the year-end projections that are included in this proposed budget, and then any past year's budgets as well. So that's kind of the guardrails for what we're going to discuss tonight. Just as a reminder, the Budget Committee is comprised of 5 elected officials that are on our board of directors and 5 community members who are over 18 years old and registered voters and live within the district. And so we have 10 members of the Budget Committee. Between the in-person and Zoom, we are sitting at 5 members of the Budget Committee at this meeting. A couple of our board members had prior engagements. And I'm not sure where a couple of our budget committee members are, but we have 5 with us today. The goal of the budget committee is to receive the budget message and the budget document. You'll receive the official budget message at the official budget committee meeting, which is on May 28th at 6 p.m. Same time, same place. Their goal is to provide members of the public a chance to ask questions and comment on the proposed budgets. That public comment section, that hearing will be included on that meeting on the 28th. And then the budget committee is charged with approving the budget document, either as submitted or as revised by a vote of a majority of the budget committee. Once the budget committee approves the budget, then the board of directors receives that approved budget and they have an opportunity to hold another public hearing and then adopt the budget for next year. We went through a similar process last year where we had our budget committee meeting the day after the election. This year, we moved the budget committee meeting, so there's a week between the election and when the budget committee meeting happens. We did that for a couple of reasons. One, depending on the outcome of the election, we have 2 distinct different paths that we'll need to take. And we just wanted to make sure that everyone has enough time to go back and look at their budget after the election results to really absorb what the impact is, whether the measures pass or fail. So that is the budget committee, the process. Are there any questions about any of that? That a lot of that should be a review for everybody. Um, the budget principles that we use here at the Recreation District is that a budget is your best plan based on what you know today, and you're probably going to have to make adjustments as you go. The way that the state of Oregon looks at local budget law is that it's the responsibility of the budget committee to set the budget authority for spending. So you're not really approving, in my opinion, the revenues, although you can question those and they do impact the budget, but you're giving us budget authority to spend a certain amount of money. And, we can do the best plan in the world. It's based on what we know on April 22nd of this year. And then things could change between now and June 30th when the current fiscal year ends. So we just do the best we can with what we have and know that we have to be nimble and be able to respond if something changes, which always seems to happen for us during budget season. Also, just wanted to remind everyone that everything that's in the proposed budget aligns to our 10-year master plan that the board adopted in November of 2023. It is available online on our future webpage. I did not include it in your budget document to save trees and paper and the cost of printing this year. So it's available online if you'd like to take a look at that again. In our current fiscal year, we are still focusing on sustainability and then looking forward to focusing more on programs, which you'll see is that second column as we move through those 10 years of our master plan. So to dive into the budget document, what you have in front of you is a document with 5 separate sections. There's budget committee information, which includes your agendas, the people on the budget committee, the resolution making me the budget officer, all the notices that we've published with the Madras Pioneer, both for this meeting and for the May 28th and June 4th meeting if a second meeting is needed. The next tab after that is our general fund. There's a narrative in there that kind of describes what the general fund is used for. We'll talk about that a little bit in a bit. And then you have your budget worksheets behind that. And behind that, I've put in a number of QuickBooks reports. So you have a profit and loss statement from July 1, 2024 to April 22nd, 2025. Those are the numbers we use to develop the year-end projections that you're going to hear about tonight. You also have a prior year comparison of the same time period last year. And I did that because this current fiscal year we've cut so much from the prior fiscal year, and it's hard to kind of wrap your head around it unless you look at the numbers. So when you look at the total cost of personnel from July 1, 24 to April 22nd, 25, it's about 20% less than it was the same period last year. Other things have gone up. So it kind of gives you context for looking at the numbers that we're proposing in the budget. For all of us geeky people that like to look at that kind of stuff, you're going to love it. For anyone else, you can look at the budget worksheets that we'll go through today and walk through. So for the MacRec District, we have 3 funds. We have the general fund, which is where all of our operations are funded out of. We have our debt services fund, which is where our final bond payment is coming out. May 31st. What month are we in? May 31st, we make our final bond payment. We have our maintenance reserve fund, which has the highest balance it's ever had in its history, $11,000. And then those 3 funds make up our budget. And then the last tab in your binder is a supplemental information section. And I just dumped a bunch of stuff in there that I think helps provide context for the numbers that you're going to see in the workbook. So you'll see the wage scale for all the employees. The board did take feedback that they received from my evaluation and prior budget committee years, and they have added the executive director to that wage scale. So that's in there. Organizational charts for if the measures pass or do not pass are in there. The transition plan for if the measures pass or do not pass is in there, the timeline for what that looks like, as well as our most recent fiscal year audit. So the supplemental information is really helpful if you have questions about what the numbers mean. All through the budget document, you'll see if the measures pass or they don't pass. So we have two budgets included in this proposal for next year that we will go into very much depth about in our next budget meeting. But I just wanted you to be aware of the language that we're using. It might say BMP, ballot measures pass, or it might say BMDNP, ballot measures do not pass. So that's just to help you as you're looking through the document. Any questions so far? This is all the same as last year so far. So now we're going to dive into how to read the worksheet. So if you turn to page 18 in your budget, or if you're online, it's page 18, but I don't think you can turn to it. You just scroll to it. This is a snapshot of our revenues part of our general fund budget. So the first thing to know is that budget law requires that we show you a certain number of prior year actuals. So we've got 4 years of actuals from before. The most recent fiscal year and all of them tie back to our audit report. And so I just wanted to make it clear that we do update our numbers to match our audit. Then the next 3 columns you see are our current fiscal year, July 1, 24 to June 30, 25. And there's 3 columns, the original budget that the budget committee approved and the board adopted. There were no changes between the budget committee approval and the board adoption. However, as many of you know, there was a major tax refund that happened for Jefferson County. And as a result of that, we had to do a budget adjustment in August to reduce our expenditures because we had quite a big hit to our budgets from that refund. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But I just wanted you to see that there's the original budget and then the amended budget so you can see the difference. The next column is the projected year end. This is based on the information we have, how much we think we're going to collect or spend through June 30th, 2025. And then I'm happy to answer questions about how we came up with our estimates. We use a mix of looking back through prior years, projecting out what we think is going to happen, trying to, we look at how much we've paid this year for certain services to figure out what it's going to be for the next 3 months. So they're all different ways that we look at our projected year end. And then finally, those last 2 columns are the proposed budgets, if the measures pass or do not pass. And they were developed with April 22nd actuals, which is why your reports, when you look at our QuickBooks reports, are all through April 22nd, because I wanted you to see what I saw and the team saw as we were developing these year-end projections. Now, if you look at page 19, which is the next page, this is the expenditure side of the general fund. And the way that we read this is similar. The top is all the same. I do want to point out that we have 3 departments that we budget for expenditures. We have recreation programs, which is where all of our programming, whether it's aquatics or sports or enrichment, is all in that line. The MAC facility, so all of our facility expenses related to the building come out of that line. And then administration, which is patron services and any of our overhead sort of costs that are required to run the district. So you'll see that we have those both in personnel services and in materials and services. And so because they have details beyond just this category level that you see on this sheet, there are more budget worksheets behind these that explain those expenditures in more detail. And then capital outlay is also a part of our recreation services. So last year we changed how we adopt our budget. We adopt it at this total recreation services level. And this was based on advice from the Department of Revenue that it gives us more flexibility. If we have to spend more on capital, we can move it from personnel without having to do a budget adjustment because it's all under the approved budget authority of that total recreation services. In addition to those 3 categories, we also have debt and short-term borrowing, which for us includes our energy efficiency loan that the district entered into back in 2015 or 16. That's paid off in 2029. And then we've got interest that we pay to Jefferson County for our tax anticipation loan, which floats us through the months of July, August, September, October until property taxes come in November. We also have transfers to other funds, and we'll talk more about that as we get to other funds. And as I mentioned before, we have three funds, the general fund and then the debt service and the maintenance fund. And then finally, we budget for contingency, and that gives us budget authority and the board the ability to move funds to any one of those other categories if something happens, an emergency, and we need it. There is a difference between a budget and cash. So I want to make that clear. Just because it says, oh, you have $15,000 in contingency, couldn't you use that to fill in the blank? The answer is we have the budget authority, but we don't have the money. We don't have the actual cash. So I wanted to make that clear. And then finally, at the bottom, you see the ending fund balance. So this is how much we project we're going to end the year with. And I am going to be very transparent with this budget committee. I am confident we will be negative, just like we were last year, for a couple reasons. One, we started the year with a negative beginning fund balance. That was all due to the legal costs of the election last year. And I expect the same thing this year. It won't be, I don't think it will be as big because a lot of those legal costs were already paid last year. But I just got a $6,000 legal bill. So we're still accruing legal expenses, even though we already did this once. So that's how you read our budget workbook. Are there any questions about that?
What
Okay.
legal costs?
Alexa, if I see you unmute, I'm going to see that you have a question. The next piece that I want to touch on is just financial oversight and accountability. So when I talk about the way that a public entity has to operate, it means that we have to have lots of checks and balances to make sure that we're spending money appropriately and in the best interest of the public. And so we have a board that reviews monthly financials that include our balance sheet and our profit and loss statement. We have a balance sheet that is updated monthly, which prior to 4 or 5 years ago was only updated annually. So the board has a good sense of our financial position on a monthly basis. Our secretary treasurer reviews a pretty good size month-end file every month and asks a lot of questions about, what is this check for and why did you charge this to the credit card? And looks like you transposed those two numbers, Courtney. You might want to fix that. She finds all these great mistakes that Courtney makes and we correct them. And that's why it's important to have that check and balance. All of this information is available on our website, and including our audits, our budgets, any budget adjustments, it's all there. And then I took a snapshot and put it on here of how we are providing transparency to the public on our current budget development. I have looked at lots of different public agencies and no one else is doing this. And I think that it's a good practice to show people as your board and as you're exploring how you're doing the budget, to show people what the board gets to see. So these are all documents that are in your supplemental information section of your budget. They are both linked on this part of the governance webpage, and they're linked inside the budget document on the website. Any questions about financial oversight and accountability? Because to me, this is one of the most important things about public service, is that we are responsible for managing the dollars that taxpayers pay us to give them a service.
I have a question.
Okay, so now I'm going to dive into a little bit more detail about our current fiscal year. And remember, I keep saying it, but I'm hoping it helps. July 1, 2024 to current. So we had about a $1.8 million tax refund in Jefferson County due to an error that a company made on their values. That resulted in about $69,000 that was going to come out of this year's tax return, this year's tax payments to pay them back. So not only did we have to reduce our property tax budget for the current year by $69,000, well, we had built the budget based on what we collected last year. And so we had to reduce the budget by about $190,000, which is almost 20% of our budget. This happened in July, right after we met all of our budget deadlines, which means we couldn't go back and change what we levied for the bond. And so there's more impacts to come on this topic as a result of that tax refund. I think a lot of people learned a lot of things through this process. It's the biggest one we've had in Jefferson County. And I want to say publicly into this group, the county was amazing to work with through this process. So, accidents happen, and we always talk to our staff about, okay, accidents are okay, we just have to fix them. This was a big one that a company made, but it did impact all the taxing districts in Jefferson County for this year.
Hello? Hello?
I also wanted to share on the revenue side that we've obtained a number of grants this year to help us stay open. In addition to the grants that you see listed, the school district also paid us double what they normally pay, both for the Madras High School swim team, and they didn't pay double. They paid a little bit more than normal for swim lessons for second graders. So usually a swim team, high school swim team season is about $21,000. This year, we also hosted districts, which is a 2-day big thing. They paid us $58,000 for that season. So part of us being able to stay open this year was because of grants like this and partnerships with both the county and with the school district. Any questions about any of this before I go to the next slide? Okay, this is a visual representation of the general fund resources over the years, and then what would happen if the ballot measures pass or do not pass. And when you look at this, you can see this green bar is an outlier, and that's where that big tax refund happened. So yeah, and this is a revised page because my Excel formula grabbed the wrong fiscal year on the print. So I made a mistake, I'm sorry. Now I want to get into a little bit about what we do and how it impacts the revenues. So this is a graphic representation of our recreation activities and the participation levels that we have. Everything that's listed under aquatic and everything that's listed under land-based, these are all of our pre-registration required activities. So this includes, hold on. So I just saw in the chat, Amanda said someone had a question. Unless it is Alexa, who's on the budget committee, we will hold for questions during the public comment or after the meeting. Thank you for understanding. Thank you, Amanda, for calling that out for me. So these include all of our pre-registration required activities. So this does not include open swim. It doesn't include open gyms. It doesn't include anything where you can just drop in and do it. So under aquatics, it's private and group swim lessons, junior swim team, and little otters, which is for toddlers. Under land-based, it's toddler activities, sports, youth camps, and I did include open gym. So open gym is included here because historically we have had registration for that, mostly pickleball. And so you see the total through March 31st, 2025 is almost the full total of last year. And so we expect to exceed participation. And in a year where we reduced our budget by 20%, I will tell you that that means that your existing remaining staff have been working 6 and 7 days a week, 14 and 15-hour days. And it is not sustainable. We are happy to do it, I think, in a pinch. And my children are asking me when they're going to see mom. So I think that we're doing our best to serve the community. And we need to find balance, I think. The next slide is on page 50 in your binder, but I did add some information because we've had a lot of questions about, well, does the school district pay for these second grade swim lessons? So I added a little bit to the graph and I love it now. You all know I just love graphs. So, and I also wanted to explain the structure. So a second grade swim lesson looks different than a group swim lesson like what we do after school. What this looks like is a school like Madras Elementary comes for 1 week, and they might have 4 second grade classes. And all 4 of those classes are going to get 180 minutes of instruction in those 4 days. And so we'll have 4 instructors in the water and 2 lifeguards, and those lifeguards rotate. Then we have 8 to 10 students per instructor, and they're working on water safety and they're working on floating. They're not learning how to do backstroke or freestyle. It's more about safety and what to do if you get in a water situation. You float, you glide yourself back to the wall, how to enter and exit safely, how to put on a life jacket, those types of things. The cost of this year was about $12,650 and that's just salary and payroll taxes. So that doesn't include benefits for anyone who happens to be full-time that's involved. And then when you look at what the school district paid for those lessons, we're at about 90% cost recovery. So that means the school district paid for about 90%, and the subsidy that the district is doing is about 10. Staff is very comfortable with this for a couple of reasons. One, the original reason this building was built was to help kids not drown and teach them how to swim. So you can see that the subsidy is about, I don't know, $1,200 that are, and when I say subsidy, I mean taxpayers are paying the difference of between what the school district pays and what they pay. Now, if you look back to 2018-19, the subsidy from the district was much higher. And now we've, from my perspective, made that a more equitable distribution of who's paying for those lessons. Any questions about that? Okay. This slide is another favorite of mine because it looks at our memberships. And there's a couple things that I think are really interesting about this slide. One is if you look back to 2014-15 and 2015-16, we had a lot of members in one or two or different types of memberships. I also have data that shows the revenue that came in with those. And I can tell you that fiscal year 15-16, where we had 1,200 members, the revenue was $55,000. For 24-25, as of March 31st, 2025, we have 751 members with a much more diverse set of membership options. Which was one of our goals, to try and create options for folks who have different family situations, different availability, all those things. And our revenue through the end of the fiscal year is projected to be $61,000. So to me, it just speaks to the importance of diversification. Our highest growing number of memberships is with seniors who are on Medicare because they get free membership through their Medicare coverage. So that's our fastest growing area. We probably sign up 3 to 5 people a day for that program. It's just been exploding. And recently with all of with the MAC being in the news a lot, we've had a lot of people come and say, I haven't been in 5 or 6 years. Can I do this? And we say, well, we don't think you should pay for a membership until after the election. And if you're over 65 and on Medicare, we are happy to sign you up for a free one. You can start swimming tomorrow. So those are the conversations that we're having at the front desk, trying to be really transparent with people about not spending their money unless the measures pass and we're going to be open. So that is all I have on the revenue side for the moment. We're going to go in a little deeper in a second. On the expenses side, we had a number of planned and unplanned maintenance items. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is just going to continue to grow. We've got a number of aging systems that I've got quotes for that are expensive. And so the boiler repairs were almost $18,000 this year. $3,000 of that was to try and keep our very, very ancient domestic hot water heater going until next fiscal year. We reset her about 15 times a day, and she's very temperamental, but she's still keeping the water hot. So that $3,000 was all I was willing to sink into it because we have to replace it. The quote for that is about $45,000. The pump room, we had a number of issues with our lap pool UV system. We had a couple of pumps. So that's at about $18,000 as of the 22nd of April. And I'm expecting that to go up a little bit more as we address a couple of issues that we're having. We had to buy a fire and water safe cabinet for permanent files. I went through a training with the archivist, I can't remember, Secretary of State, one of the state departments that deals with public records. And we're supposed to have all of our permanent records in these filing cabinets. We bought one this year. We need to buy 2 more. Those are $5,500. things that I would think would have been installed at the beginning. But nonetheless, here we are. We have ongoing maintenance contracts and repairs. Those contracts are for our HVAC system, our Climatech and BEX system, which controls all of the chemicals in the pump room. Plumber, we have a plumber come out quarterly because we don't have anyone on staff with that specialty. So that's been about $11,000 so far this year. We've had a couple pool liner leaks, and thankfully this year it was only $3,400. It was almost triple that last year when we had that big leak in the lap pool. And then we did get a grant to refurbish our diving blocks and our rope swing. And we also replaced the backstroke flags all before districts. And I heard nothing but glowing reviews of how beautiful the facility looked for that. And that's always our goal, is to show off how great our community is and how much we support swimming. The fun thing that happened this spring, my April surprise, was that the state implemented new rules for how we manage public pools. We've already implemented a few items that are easily implemented. Others are going to cost us some money, and we have them budgeted for next year. We have increased the number of lifeguards. We have to add 2 lifeguards to our open swims. Historically, we've used minimum wage 14-year-old deck attendants who are first aid certified to manage the slide. Now we have to have a lifeguard at the top and the bottom of the slide. That increases our costs about 13%. And so the cost of an open swim is about $1,500 per 3-hour open swim. Now it's going to be about $1,850. As I've shared before, we typically get about $800 to $900 in revenue for an open swim. So now we're just subsidizing it all the more with this new rule. We also have documentation for safety, water chemistry, and asset management that, frankly, this district should have been doing a lot of it all along. It doesn't have a great history. Water chemistry is something that this district has done really well. Documentation of safety and assets is a different story. So we have entered into agreement with something called Hydro Apps. I'm going to do a whole thing on it for the board. It is amazing. It's $1,800 for this first year, and then after that, it's $900 a year. So it's a very low cost, designed by aquatics professionals. The hard thing about it is it's probably going to take 5 of me and Shauna to get everything in the system that needs to be in the system for us to be able to use it. And so if the measures do not pass and the pool needs to be closed this summer, that's what we'll be doing, is building not only the documentation that we need for all the things, but then also putting it in the system. What it does is it automates everything. So all the guards use a iPad to plug in the water chemistry into the system. They do their safety checks in the morning and the evening. So we move away from paper completely, and then we can do trending. We can hold people accountable if they don't do what they're supposed to do. Sean and I are so excited about it. And it's a relatively low cost thing, and it's going to take us a lot of work to get it where it needs to be. And then lastly, we have, because of that tax refund that I talked about earlier, we don't have enough money in our bond account to make our final bond payment. And so we will be transferring $40,000 this month from the general fund to the debt services fund to make that final payment. We will get tax collections in that account for May and June, so after the payment's made. So those funds will get transferred back to the general fund. And then we have 2 pathways depending on the outcome of the election. I've spent more time on the phone with finance and legal professionals in the last 2 months than I ever thought possible, because these things are very complicated. And so I talked with our auditor about this one, and I talked with Gabriel Solis over at the county, our tax collector. And if the measures do not pass, then the board will have to hold a special meeting, probably sometime the week of the election, to approve a loan from the general fund to the debt services fund that then next year can be repaid back by us levying money on the debt to the public. So whatever we borrow, the Department of Revenue says that even though we've paid the bond off, we can still levy 1 more year to pay back whatever the loan is to the general fund. So if the measures do not pass, that loan will get paid back through levying about, I'm thinking $30,000 is what it will end up being at the end of the year because of those extra revenues that will come in between now and June. If the measures pass, we do not have to have a special meeting because then it's just a transfer from the general fund to the debt services fund, and then all those funds go away when the district dissolves. Does that make sense? It's a lot. It's all sitting right here. Migraines. Okay, so that's the expenses side of things. Now, this is the graphic representation of our expenses by those categories I explained earlier. So personnel services for this fiscal year, you can see is significantly lower than the prior fiscal year. And then you see what happens if the measures pass or if the measures fail. Same with materials and services, significantly lower because of that 20% budget cut that we talked about. And then if the measures pass and fail, capital, we have not spent our full capital budget authority, and I'll talk about that in a little bit when we go through those slides. So this is the picture for the requirements or the expenditures. And this is so important because I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there about staff not wanting to work after COVID. You know, where did all the money go? You used to be open all the time. And this is the story. We were open all the time from 2008 to COVID. And then our building turned 15 years old and everything started going away. And because we prioritized being open all the time to saving money for when we needed to replace things, we have no money saved to replace things. And so every time we have a major capital or maintenance need, it comes out of our ending fund balance. It comes out of any money that we would have had in savings. And so you see the correlation between how much money we're spending on capital, which is those brown bars on the screen, and our ending fund balance, which is our cash flow to get us through the summer and to help us weather storms like tax refunds and other things, goes down because there's not an endless pot of money as many people think governments have. We have a finite number of resources, and we're at a point in our age of the facility and our financial position that we have to choose between being open and offering programs and services or fixing our asset. And if we don't fix the asset, we can't be open at all. Yeah. So we're in a real tricky situation, which is why through the master planning process in 2023 and the business planning process in late 2023, the board came to the decision to put these two ballot measures on both last year and this year because we have a structural imbalance in our budget. Any questions about any of that before I dive into the details of your worksheets? Alexa, are you still with us? I'm going to assume that's a thumbs up. All right, so if you go to page 18, I want to walk you through the projected year end for this fiscal year. So again, that's through June 30th, 2025. At the top here, you'll see I'm kind of trying to highlight which two columns we're looking at on your budget document. So first, we thought we might end the fiscal year with a negative 20,000 fund balance last year. We ended with a negative 25,000 fund balance. We spent almost 40,000 on legal for the election. So that's why we went so far into the negative. Property taxes, you can see the original budget was 885,000. And then after the tax correction, and needing to pull out all that extra money, we came down to 758,000 as the budget. What we didn't anticipate is the more significant impact that refund would have. And at first I thought, well, wow, this county must not be collecting as many taxes. But as I talked it through with Gabriel, it made more sense that it's that tax refund that really killed us this year on our revenues. So you can see we have some of the lowest ones we've had in a while. 739,000 is what we're projected to end the year with. And that's based on what we've collected 2 years ago before this tax refund. Programs and services revenue is broken up into three different things. We have memberships, punch cards, and partner programs. So we're expecting to come in higher than we originally expected, 61,000. Our facility revenues we're projecting to be at about 100,000. That's pretty conservative. We've got a lot of rentals coming up in May and June that have come in since April 22nd. So I'm hoping that that's going to be a little bit higher. And then user fees and registrations came in lower than we anticipated. And part of that is in the fall, you'll recall, when all this tax refund stuff was happening, we didn't promote any of our fall sports programs because we didn't know if we were going to be able to do them or not. And so our participation levels were much lower than usual. So that's part of that story. The other part of that story is part of that tax refund was cutting open swims back from every Saturday to doing one Saturday and one Sunday a month. And so that's part of that reduction as well. Grants and donations. So I said earlier in a slide that we had gotten $61,000 in grants. I put in the full 49,000 that we're waiting to hear back from to get us to 109,000 to balance this year-end budget. I really wanted to try my best not to present you a negative ending fund balance, and that's why I'm being really clear that I think we're going to end up there. I'm hopeful for the grants that we've applied for. Most of them are for tackle football for the fall. There's a couple maintenance ones that hopefully will help us with the hot water heater. And then there's one for youth workforce development that would help us with helping our lifeguards become good workers. And then the interest is, I'm guessing, going to be much higher than that because we now have our tax anticipation loan money sitting in that account collecting interest that we get to keep. So that number hopefully is a little bit higher, and then miscellaneous revenue. So you can see that grants and donations is at I'm estimating about 130,000 for the year end. And then for transfers from other funds, I'm projecting that we're going to bring in about $9,000 in property tax revenue to the debt service fund in May and June, and that will get transferred back to the general fund. And that gives us budget authority to transfer that money in. So what that leaves us with is a 1.16 projected year-end revenue. Any questions about any of those assumptions, any of those line items? You can see all the details in the QuickBooks reports that are behind your workbook. All right, so we'll move to expenditures. I was not planning tonight to go into the line item detail of the year-end projections. I encourage you to look at that between now and the next budget meeting, and if you have questions, we can certainly talk about it. At the category level, we're planning to be at 99.5% of budget for personnel. We have budget authority for 9 FTE. We have kept it at 8.75 because we're trying to save money everywhere we can. You can see that we've gone over a little bit in rec programs. I was a little too aggressive with cutting back lifeguard salaries when we did the 20% cut. We need to have a certain ratio, and we've added 2 lifeguards to open swims that were not anticipated in the budget. But we've had cost savings elsewhere. We did not hire a facilities person this year like we had hoped to. And I've been covering the front desk a lot to try and save money in administration. So that's how we've been able to get to 99.5% of budget for personnel. On materials and services, we're going to be at about 98% of budget, assuming nothing weird happens between now and June with our facility. Our recreation programs is a little bit over because we've had to purchase a number of safety items related to the new OHA pool regulations and a number of expenditures related to it just went right out of my head. The asset management system and all of those things. So we've projected out what we think we need to spend between now and June 30 on those items. And that's why rec is a little bit over. Facilities is pretty much spot on, and administration is coming in under budget. Just like I said, we've just been tightening our belts. We can't tighten our belts much more. This is pretty much a bare bones year for us. Especially if you look back to 23-24 or 22-23, it's stark, the difference between the expenditures in those years. And then lastly, we've spent 15,000 out of our 45,000 that we had budgeted. That 15,000 includes boiler repairs that were over $5,000, which is our capital level, and our beautiful fire and water resistant file cabinet. So that's what that 15,000 is. We're hoping that we don't need to replace the hot water heater between now and June because it will require a board budget adjustment because we don't have budget authority for that right now. So that means our total recreation services budget for June 30, 2025 is $1.084 million. Debt and short-term borrowing is right where we expected it to be with repayment of our Energy Trust loan and the interest that we paid to Jefferson County. Transfers to other funds. Now, earlier you saw the number of 40,000 that we're going to transfer, but remember, we're going to transfer money back. And so I'm thinking that the loan, if the measures don't pass, is going to be $30,000. And so that's why we have us transferring out that amount because it's what we transfer as of June 30th. That's going to be part of that number. And so we are not planning to spend contingency at this time, which means we're at about 93% of budget for our expenditures, leaving us an ending fund balance of $693. And that's just, the good news is from a cash flow perspective, we have a $250,000 tax anticipation loan that is already in our bank account and we don't have restrictions. So we can use it to cash flow us now. But what we're doing is we're robbing Peter to pay Paul because we pay all of this back in November and then those are funds we don't have to operate from November to June. And it's a cycle of poverty that we're in as a district. I'm just going to say it like that. Any questions about expenditures? Okay, so in your budget, under the supplemental information section, there are a number of decisions and input that the board has made leading up to the development of the budget. So the board decided to pursue the 2 ballot measures of dissolving and reforming, basically talked about it for about 4 months straight this time, knew pretty much immediately that they wanted to go back out for that again. In February, March, and April, the board held a number of work sessions and made a number of decisions in their business meetings as it related to budget assumptions built into the budget. And we'll talk about all of those at our next budget meeting. The new pool rules, you'll see a table analyzing the differences between what we do today and what we need to do now because of those new rules at the state level. Our fee schedule, which has not changed in 3 years. We've kept our fees consistent. Our organizational charts, if the measures pass or if they don't pass, so you can see how many staff we go to one way or the other. And then our wage scale, which I mentioned, has been updated to reflect all of the positions that a district of our size would typically have. And then it shows you what positions we're filling if the measures pass or if the measures do not pass. So all of that's in your supplemental budget. Some unknowns that we have between now and June. The biggest one, obviously, is the election outcome. We have planned for both potential outcomes in your proposed budgets that we'll talk about on May 28th. Any unanticipated capital or maintenance issues, it's something that keeps me up at night. We just don't know what's going to happen between now and June. We're hoping that everything just keeps working. And then that final general fund loan. I mean, if all of a sudden a bunch of people decide to pay back taxes, that loan may go down to less than 30,000. So we'll see what those returns come back at for May and June. So those are some of the unknowns that we have. And then lastly, this is our most recent staff and service. They were really happy that I took a pic, I'll take a group picture. But this is our lifeguard crew. If the measures pass, we will add 15 to 20 people to this picture. If the measures do not pass, 4 of us will remain. So just as a visual representation of what that looks like. The next steps for our budget process is please take a look at the budget document. If you are on Zoom and you want it hard copy, I've got one for you. We also have a public inspection copy available here at the pool, so anybody can come and take a look at it. Hard copy at the front desk. It's also available on the website, as I mentioned earlier. I would love to talk through this with you ahead of the budget committee meeting, because if you have a question about the budget, chances are another member of the committee has the same question. So I'm asking that, excuse me, if you do have questions, try to get them to me by May 23rd, and then I can send an email out to the full budget committee with answers to all your questions. I am here a lot. I'm happy to set up a time to meet in person. We can set up a Zoom meeting if that's easier. We can have a phone call, a text exchange, whatever's easiest for you so that I can answer questions. Election day is May 20th. And then Wednesday, May 28th is our official budget committee meeting where the budget committee will come together and deliberate, hear public comment, and then you have two options. You can approve the budget that night, or you can recess to the next noticed meeting, which is on June 4th, if it's needed. And both of those meetings have been noticed in the paper, I think this week and next week, or next week and the following week. We have to notice it between 5 and 30 days prior to the meeting, so that's already been sent to the Pioneer. And that's my presentation. It's a lot. Does anybody have any questions about the document, about the process, about any of the numbers we talked about tonight?
The next meeting, that's 6.
6 o'clock on the 28th here at the MAC on Zoom. Yeah.
I have a question.
Courtney, I want to thank you for another very organized, very easy to follow budget binder. There is a lot of information in here. So thank you very much.
Alexa, did you have anything?
I don't. Thank you for that information, Courtney, though.
Oh, hold on. We can't hear you.
I have a question.
Hold on. Let me turn the volume up on something here.
I have a question. I'm on.
Oh, I think I can hear you now. Alexa, any questions? And then we'll get to public comment.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I don't have any questions. Thank you for all of your work, Courtney.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Okay, as discussed earlier in the meeting, we will move to public comment. As a reminder, this is comment, not question. After we adjourn the meeting, anybody who's able to, please stay and we can go through Q&A. But I just want to make sure we're respectful of budget committee members' time who might need to leave expeditiously. So we'll start in the room if anyone would care to make public comment. There's only one person, so I'm looking at you, Scott.
I have no comment.
Okay, perfect. Would anyone on Zoom care to make public comment?
I guess it was. Hello?
Yes, Vicky, go ahead. We can hear you.
I guess it was confusing before because you were asking for questions, but I was trying to ask a question, but was told I couldn't. And now I can't ask a question.
Vicky, those were questions for the budget committee. If you have comment, we'd love to take it now. Otherwise, I'll adjourn the meeting just so that we can send budget committee members home who might not be able to stay, and then we'll stay on for your question.
Oh, my apologies. Sorry.
You're fine. No worries.
Okay, then not seeing call for public comment, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 7:05. Anyone who would care to stay for a Q&A session, we'll jump right into that. If you cannot stay, thank you very much for your time tonight.
And Vicky, if it's all right with you, I'm going to keep the Zoom recording so that if anyone watching this later has similar questions, they'll hear what your questions are and our answers, if that's all right.
Sure.
Great. What questions do you have?
Okay. The boiler looks like it's kind of sad.
Yes.
First of all, I wanted to say that I've worked in nonprofits my whole life, pretty much. I'm a social worker, and so I know what it's like to live under the the thing of, you know, people voting on your employment and stuff like that. And it's hard. You know, I just want to kind of offer that. Um,
Thanks.
and I remember one, like in Portland, this is like 2001, where like money just like disappeared from the general fund, and there were all these feelings and everything, and we were just like, you know, we just want to pay our mortgage, you know.
Right.
So it was hard, but so I'm wondering about the boiler. You said $45,000, and it sounds like, you know, we're putting Band-Aids on it now. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, we don't have the cash to replace it.
I understand, like, what's being done about the future. I mean, I realize we're not talking about the future, but like,
Well, we're not in the meeting anymore, so I can tell you all about it.
That was why we wanted to adjourn, Vicky, so that we could get into the nitty-gritty stuff.
So what I can share with you is that we have it budgeted to get replaced next year.
oh, okay.
I've got about $30,000 worth of grant applications either submitted or in the works. And we're going to be able to replace it hopefully in September when we close for maintenance next year. That's the plan.
Okay.
We just don't have the cash to do it.
Okay, because I was just envisioning, like, you know, it like blowing up or whatever, and
Oh, yeah.
then well, I wasn't like envisioning that, but I'm just saying, like,
Knock on wood.
Well, we've talked about it as a staff, and we do take safety precautions when we go back there to reset it as many times as we do. And we did talk with our contractor about, you know, is this dangerous for us? And he said that there's not, because of what's wrong with it, there's not a danger it's going to explode. Now something could change, which is why we try and take as many precautions as possible. And there's only 2 of us that really go back there to reset it. We don't let just any lifeguard go back to that room. So, yeah. So we're hopeful that we're successful in getting grants to help us with it. And we do have it in the budget, whether the measures pass or do not pass, to replace it, because it has to be replaced. It's from 2006. So she's on her last leg.
I think she's laying sideways.
Yeah, it's just-
I think she's kind of
Yeah.
crawling at this point. Halfway in the groove. Yeah.
Did you have any other questions, Vicky? Oh,
Did we lose her? Oh, we lost her.
well, I'll stay on in case she comes back.
She might have lost
All
connectivity.
right, I am going to stop recording. I'm gonna. Hi, Vicky. Welcome back. We were just saying we lost her. Did you have other questions for us?
Oh, she's in the waiting room now.
Oh,
That's weird.
no, that's me.
But I looked like she was back in the room.
No,
I think it's still forcing you to admit.
Yeah, that is weird because
Yeah.
I wonder if we have a weird internet connection.
Oh, Michelle.
I know, but I hate taking it out.
Well,
But you should.
But you know me, I lose.
No, I know.
you need a necklace.
No,
Make a jewelry. You can bedazzle it.
no.
I think she's probably having internet challenges.
hello,
Vicky, you're with us. Yay.
hello,
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
yes.
Welcome back.
Do you have any grants that you're applying for, like on an ongoing basis?
So I'm actually going to pull up.
Like not just like here or there, not on a reactionary basis, but on a proactive basis. Also,
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any grants that are for like operating expenses?
Yes. Oh, wrong. I'm going to pull up. I've been working on my report for the next board meeting and updating it. So this, can you see my screen, hopefully? This is the list of grants that we've applied for this year and received.
Wow, wow.
So this is that list. And then we have a list for future exploration that I've been updating. I probably spend about 4 or 5 hours a week looking for grants.
Wow.
I don't know where you're.
Hello, are you still there?
Yes. Oop, hold on. Can you hear me still, Vicky? I think I fixed it. So these are the there you are. Okay, so these are the grants that we're going to apply for, and their deadlines. And then these are the unsuccessful applications from this year.
Okay, hang on. I'm switching you over to my computer.
Oh, so you can see what.
Yeah. Hang on. It's very delicate operation. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm still on stereo.
Can you hear us, Vicky?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good.
I'm trying to get off my phone, but trying to get. Also, I was the oh, here it is. Here it is. Okay. Are you there?
Yes, we're here.
Okay. You mentioned about the school, about the little kids and stuff like that. What
Yeah.
about the high school kids that are racing there or doing that?
Yeah, so our swim team practices from November to about February, and they paid this year 56,000 to use the facility.
Oh, okay. And then do you still have the master program going?
We don't currently have that because we don't have a USAA certified coach on our staff right now. That's on our to-do list if the measures pass.
Oh, okay. Oh, and I was wondering about the possibility of, because COCC, I mean, I know they're kind of
Now she can see who she's talking to. Oh, I think she's frozen. Vicky, you're frozen. We're looking at you frozen right now, but I can answer about COCC. We are working with them on offering credit classes here in the fall if the measures pass. We also work with them to offer passes to students that the college pays for. So because the Madras campus students don't have access to facilities that they have in Bend and Redmond. So we work with them on that as well. And shoot, we lost her. Darn. I'm gonna